You know what it was? It was the fact that I felt so, when you suppress trauma and you suppress all kinds of these emotions and you're not in touch with them, you feel like you're carrying 500 pounds around with you all the time.
Mm,
Like it's a constant, like you just feel weighted down. You don't even really necessarily feel healthy. And so after I went through the MDMA, like I said, it gave me so much clarity. I came out, I felt like I was floating on a cloud. The
yeah.
weight was lifted. The tension and the trauma I had been carrying for decades got released from my body, and
Mm,
I just felt so like light and airy and
mm,
really in touch with everything, and it gave me the courage to be able to talk about it and not be without being ashamed.
yeah. Mm,
And because
that's
it's
huge.
not, yeah, it's not like, you go through and people are like, well, why me? Well, why not me? I wouldn't
Yeah.
want this to happen to somebody else,
Mm, mm,
so why
mm,
not me? So now what can I do and take this and make this into a positive?
mm.
And coming out of my MDMA session, I just had that. It was literally just clear.
Hello, Unfiltered Conversations family. I am Michael Rashad Oliver. You already know who I am, and I'm with Tracy Smallito. She is the founder and voice behind Trauma Rockstars, a platform built on real stories, raw truths, and what she calls rockstar resilience. She survived a traumatic childhood incident, carried the trauma in silence for decades, and we all know how that is and how that affects your heart, your mind, and your soul. But now she uses humor, honesty, and the survival centered tools to help people stop hiding what hurts them and start rebuilding with courage. Tracy, welcome to Unfiltered Conversations. Thank you for having me. Having me interview you.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm really excited.
No problem. You are pretty awesome. Just going through what you provided and what you shared with us online is one, I have to take, for me, a moment to breathe and process.
Mm.
A lot of my viewers probably don't know who have watched, but some who do. I opened up as a child. I was taken advantage of, and I know the trauma that it does and what happens to you, especially when you try to keep it in silence for years, and then you have to deal with that person at picnics, different family events, and
Ooh,
everything, and and so
wow.
I have seen and witnessed and experienced that drama firsthand. So this kind of opened me up, took me back, and made me not just approach with caution with the questions I had, but like to really evaluate how I grew from that incident. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank
I
you.
hope I didn't trigger you.
Oh, no, no, no. I will say, if anything, you showed me what resiliency is
Mm-hmm.
through just researching you and how you move forward in that. So, like, my first question is, kind of before we kind of talk about that healing, that trauma, and more on your platform, what has a normal day been like for you when you need to be strong?
Well, now there's um much more normalcy to my days now.
Hmm.
And I do want to say before I go too far into this, this your podcast is unfiltered, and I just want you to know I'm completely open to and talk about anything. So I'm
Awesome.
really comfortable. So don't feel like you have to walk on eggshells asking me questions.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
I want to be very honest and open about that. But I didn't start my healing journey till 6 years ago.
Wow.
So, yeah, so when I say decades, I mean it was decades. And, now that I'm on the other side of it, I do
Mhm.
have like normalcy in my life. I'm very in tune with my nervous system, like what my body's trying to tell me. I didn't have a good night's sleep last night, so I need to like reflect on that and think, okay, why didn't I have a good night's sleep? Things like that. I'm much more where before I'd be freaking out. I wouldn't know how to handle it. I wouldn't know
Mm,
how to understand the messages that my body was is giving me, the cues.
right.
So now I can process that and ground myself and be like, okay, what's going on here? I've got the tools
Right.
to be successful, where up until 6 years ago, I was a freaking disaster. I was a hot,
Wow.
hot mess. Yeah.
Wow, man. And now that you have the tools, your branding actually talks about that. You talk about real stories, raw truths,
Yeah.
and that rock star, that resilience, right? When you hear that phrase now, what part of it feels the most personal to you?
The resilience part, I
Mm,
think for me, I think I came up with just a little backstory. I came
yeah.
up with the name of the show because I used to work in the music industry for
Oh, oh,
many years. And so that's where I came up with Trauma Rockstars because honestly, anybody who's just trying to heal and be better and be the best version of themselves, I consider a rock star. You're a rock
yeah.
star.
Yeah.
So, and part of that is being resilient, is being able to not run from the scary things. You need to jump and dive into it. Dive into what's causing the problem.
Yeah.
And because I tell everybody, I do keynotes all the time, and I tell people, you cannot run from it. You've already been through the worst you've been through.
Mhm.
So why is it so hard to deal with understanding your nervous system and what your body's it's because mostly out of fear.
Yeah.
We're afraid. It's overwhelming to think about having to heal and go
Mhm.
through that journey. And for me, because I had two different instances happen, it was massive. Like,
Oh,
my healing journey was massive, and I think that's why a lot of people avoid it because it could be massive. But the thing is it really only takes baby steps.
yeah.
It just takes education, understanding things, and just taking little baby steps, and before you know it, you're so far ahead of the game.
Mm. Yeah, and you're not wrong, especially when we talk about, like getting through a struggle. I always tell my soldiers because I do have Army soldiers on the base. I'm a superintendent for housing,
Mhm.
so we house different I would say what's it called departments, if you want to say,
Mhm.
or so you have Army, you have Space Force, you have the Air Force, of course, right, and some Marines. So when I'm talking to them, I always tell them like, "Hey, take one step at a time. Don't
Yeah.
try to take the whole huge big steps." And you're so right about that. It's like being conscious and aware and taking in the small things. Man, you
Mhm.
need it. You need it so much, man.
Yeah, you do, and I didn't r I to be honest with you, I didn't realize I was as much of a mess as I was. I had no idea. It all came tumbling down at once
Mm,
for me, um, and I had no clue. I thought I was fine, I was just getting through life, and I ended up not being fine at all. But and those babies, because and if I had known, like, if I had looked at that whole big picture of everything I needed to overcome, I probably
mhm.
wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd be
Wow.
still not, I don't mean literally,
Yeah.
I just
No.
would
Yeah.
still be
Yeah.
suppressing
Yeah.
everything and just floating through life and not getting to that next level that I needed to be, because it was a lot,
Mhm.
and but now that I'm on the other side of it, it's so worth it, and
Yeah.
so many amazing things happen when you start healing, like you find your people, right?
Yeah.
And it's just opened so many doors, and my biggest thing is I'm so able to talk about this now because of all the amazing things that have opened up in my life, and made themselves available to me. And so when I talk to people, I want to kind of be your biggest cheerleader because
Yeah.
it is something to be excited about. Healing is scary. It is. I
Yeah.
get the fear. And it's not for the weak at heart. I understand that, but I want to offer you something that's to look forward to be excited about when you get to the other side of it because if you look at it through that lens, it's so much more easier to deal with it from day to day. And
Mhm.
there's times, through and still like I don't think I'll ever be fully healed because I'm always going to be trying to evolve and be better and go deeper. So I am open to that, but I think when people understand that once you start the journey, it can be a really beautiful experience because you learn so much about yourself.
Mhm.
And I look back at my life and the choices I made and the horrible relationships I had, not just romantic, just in general, friendships
Mhm.
and the crap you put up with from people and and just the bullshit that
Yeah.
went on for years. And it totally makes sense to me now. I'm like, well, I understand why, because I was a
Mhm.
mess. Like it, but now I embrace that mess because that
Mhm.
now is like special sauce.
So, you said before, if I can help one person who is struggling, I've done my job.
Yeah.
When did that become more than just a nice sentence, a nice line to say, and actually become your assignment as you went through your journey?
It was going through my journey, I was kind of thinking about starting the podcast. But what really catapulted me to the really far next level is a year and a half ago. I was introduced, I actually read about MDMA therapy. And I don't know if you're familiar with MDMA therapy. I can explain it a little bit.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's actually used a lot on soldiers with PTSD. That's what it was mainly used for. So, when I went through my MDMA therapy, it was truly a gift. Like, it was a gift. It was so incredible, and I was like, "Okay, that's it. I'm starting this podcast because people need to know about this. They need to know that there's other modalities out there, just not just the MDMA. There's so many modalities out there for healing
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
available to us now that people aren't aware of, so I wanted to start this so I could talk about all these modalities and I can have other people on that have been through their own trauma journeys and what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, because
Mhm.
our journeys are our own. So if you take bits and pieces of all these things that have worked for all these other survivors, you can customize it's your
Mhm.
journey. So you can customize your healing journey for yourself. You don't have to sit in front of a therapist if you don't want to. Not that
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with therapy, um, but there's other ways. So when I read about and I had already been doing a lot of work before I heard about the MDMA, but what MDMA is it's basically it's the key ingredient of ecstasy,
Mhm.
but it's not the street drug. It's a
Okay.
microdose of it, and it's
Right.
done
Okay.
I did this through a therapy center, so I was guided through it with a therapist.
Mhm.
So when I first read about it, I was like, "Oh my gosh," like something in the core of me was like, "This is what I need to do," because what it does is it puts you in touch with your subconscious. But the
Mhm.
reason why it's been so successful for soldiers that come back with complex PTSD and stuff is because you go through this journey, what you're looking at what has happened to you through a lens of like love and light and
Mhm.
affection, and it's not scary.
Mhm.
So going through it, it's an incredible journey. And what happens when you suffer from trauma, it shuts off your happy chemicals in your body, like all your serotonin and endorphins, everything just gets shut off like permanently. And so when I went through my MDMA therapy, I just did one session. That's it. And it turns everything back on.
Wow.
and it doesn't shut off. It's been a year and a half, and I'm still completely, like, on cloud 9 like I was the day after I went through the treatment, and but one thing I just wanna tell people is that I did do this. I did a lot of months and months of research,
Mhm.
and I had to be qualified to even be a candidate to get that, and the psychiatrist had to do there was a ton of intake, a lot of health history, a lot of back and forth conversations, and then when she determined I was a good candidate for it, she paired me up with one of her therapists that she thought would
Mhm.
be a good fit, and it was the perfect fit, and you've got to do it with somebody you trust. You have to be very comfortable and do it with somebody you trust, and my therapist was absolutely. I actually had her on the show. We had a whole episode and we talked about this whole journey,
Mhm.
and, but it was remarkable. So after I got done with that, I was like, "Alright, I'm definitely doing the podcast," like, because I knew there were other
Yeah.
modalities out there too.
Yeah.
So when I went from wanting to help one person to just wanting to help as many people as I can. If it's only one, that's fine. I've done my job, but if more people, but I get so many incredible messages from people that are like, "Oh my gosh, my the light bulb went on. I was listening to this episode and the light bulb went on. Like this has
Yeah.
helped me so much." And what it does is talking about your trauma is healing. It's
Mhm.
therapeutic. And so when you can find a platform like my show, your show, any show out there that you feel safe and comfortable and create this community together, we can all be there for each other.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, exactly what you're saying because it is so potent to one, have the journey and go through that and then just even with the type of therapy and what you was discussing, like
Hmm.
I need to look more into that, do my research as well. You have struck the curious chord with me, so.
Well,
Oh,
there's a therapy center here in Florida
mhm.
that offers this with then other modalities as well. So if you want to reach out to me offline, I can give you their information.
Heck yeah, heck yeah, heck yeah.
And the one
Most
thing that's
definitely.
funny is because I don't want people to think like MDMA, it's the street drug ecstasy. It is not at all.
Yeah.
And like this is guided through a qualified like healthcare professional, but um what was I just gonna say? Just drawing a complete blank. You'll have to edit that part out. But oh,
You're right.
I know what I was gonna say, but what it is when they were this used to be legal in the early '80s. It was legal
Mhm.
up until the early '80s until the street drug ecstasy got introduced to the world. So
Mm.
then guess what happens? The government freaks out and thinks everybody's gonna, and so they made it illegal.
Yeah.
So it became illegal. And then now it's more at the forefront again. Um and I think it's really important, like if this is striking curiosity for anybody listening, just you can reach out to me or there's a so much information on YouTube about it. You can get ton that's where I did most of my research was on
Mhm.
YouTube, and you can get so much but there's also people are doing psychedelics. Like, I just had my first hypnosis session a couple months ago, and that was with a therapist, and
Mhm.
it was amazing. It was the most amazing journey, and, so and you can get just I meditate, like, meditation is really what
Mm.
started my healing journey 6 years ago. I started meditating, and very quickly, I started getting this download of information that was saying, "Tracy, you're a mess. You have a lot of work to do. You need to be doing this every day." You know, I started getting all this information, and you
Mhm.
can get all the answers you need through meditation too, but you just need to be consistent with it. I mean, it's called a practice for a reason, you know?
Yes, ma'am. You're right, you're right. You know, when as we move forward, I'll say that question for later, but as we move forward, I would like to talk more, and get into the cusp of, your trauma, right?
Mhm.
You were 12 years old. You talk about an accident that occurred and happened, and you
Mhm.
describe it of having to relearn how to read, how to write, how to walk and talk, right?
Yes.
What do people misunderstand about surviving something physically before you survive it emotionally?
Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of us are physically there, but
Mhm.
we're not mentally, emotionally, spiritually there. Because again, you go through something horrific. Like, I was the only survivor of that accident. Both of my cousins passed away. And any one of my injuries could have killed me,
Yeah.
honestly. And I had several compounded on top of one another. So you're there physically, but, I just floated through life for forever after that, and I think people just need to realize that, and I think it's really important to understand that what trauma does to us and
Mhm.
how it does shut off those happy chemicals in our body, and that you're in that whole fight or flight, they call it, that fight or flight mode kind of the rest
Mhm.
of your life. But now there's two more. There's freeze and fawn now too, I'm hearing about. So
Yeah.
now there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And I think I've been all of them.
Mm.
um so I think it's important that people understand that you can't possibly just go through something like that and not take some time to do the work to get past it, because it's not possible. You have to do the work.
You're 100% right. So how does that work, like for you, like you talked just now about you being 12, you surviving physically, emotionally, being compromised and having to do the work and work through it. What made the decision for you? Like, I'm trying to retrack and retrace your story. Like when you was 16, you stopped surgeries because you wanted some version of normalcy as a
Mhm.
teenager, right? What did normalcy mean as a teenager for you? And what does normalcy mean now? Like I kind of discussed it in the first question, but like how do
Yeah.
those two portray each other for you looking back on your life as a teenager, what you thought as normal, and then now what you think normal is.
Yeah, well, I did have a somewhat normal life and
Yeah.
upbringing prior to the accident.
Mm,
But then once the accident happened, the severity of my injuries, I was burned on 70% of my body.
mm,
And when you go through that, not to mention the head injury and all the other stuff that happens, when you're burned, your journey doesn't even really start until after you get out of the hospital, because
mm,
there's years of skin grafts, reconstructive surgery. I mean, I had to have my one knee was so bad I had to have three different skin grafts on him because the first two didn't
wow,
take. There, so I
mm,
had years. So you're fast forward 12 to 16 was just surgeries. I was going through reconstructive surgery, skin grafts, everything they could possibly do to help me. So there was never going to be a normal anything for me moving forward from that.
mm,
However, I was in high school and I wanted to try and have some kind of normal teenage life. I had a great support system of friends that had been with me since the accident. So they
mhm,
knew everybody knew my story. So I just wanted to have some kind of normal life in high school.
yeah.
Um, which, we went to the football, football Fridays was super important, that
Mhm,
Friday night lights, right?
yep,
Football Fridays, and you go to the games, and then you go to the socials afterwards, and you do that. And so that was like my normal, but I was still very, very much in a raw healing mode physically, not to mention all the rest, the mental and all that, because I just kind of figured if I forget about it, I don't have to
yeah.
deal with it.
You're right, you're right. Um, and especially the normalcy, especially in Florida, is really big on football, uh, basketball, well, baseball, football, baseball, and now yeah, soccer, or I guess soccer, which is football, is coming into effect more in Florida as well.
Mhm.
So trust me, I get it, especially as a teenager. That we lived and died by that in Miami.
And
Um,
hanging out with your friends,
oh my
that's what you
goodness, yeah,
do when you're a teenager.
yeah,
You hang out with your friends. You don't
yeah,
wanna be
yeah.
home. You wanna be
Yeah, yeah. I get you 100%. Um, but there is a part of the story that, you
Mhm.
kinda kept private for decades, right?
Oh,
Without
until
going into,
last
like,
year.
great detail. Yeah, without going into great detail, I don't wanna share, what did that silence feel like for you? Did it feel safer not to speak about it? Or did it feel like it was a secret for you to just hold?
Do you want me to explain what happened, or do you just want me to high level?
It's up to you. It is up to you.
What do you
Be as
think?
free as you like to be.
Okay, so, let me just I'll explain what happened.
Okay.
So, as we were talking in high school, you just wanna hang out with your friends and be normal. 16, I was with friends and we went to a high school party, and, totally normal, nothing unexpected. With high school party, unfortunately, you never know who's gonna be there. You never know who's gonna show up. You just don't know. Everybody pretty much knew my story. I mean, I was the girl at school with the burns, basically. And we get to this party, and I really don't know what happened. I don't remember a lot of this, but I was drugged and gang raped at this high school
Um,
party. I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning in an abandoned building, naked, without my clothes, anything on the floor. There wasn't a soul there with me. And I still to this day do not know, like, how I got home. I
wow.
somehow back then there weren't phones. We didn't have like cell phones and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I had money on me, to be honest. Like maybe I had $5, couple bucks maybe, but somehow I don't know if I went to a house or somewhere and got a cab and got home. But I was so, and I had known something had happened, because when you're drugged, like, I remember I was in and out, and I know there was at least 2 or 3 boys involved. Um, but I hadn't really known what happened because I was still kind of out of it.
Yeah.
And so I went home and I felt so disgusting. I was so ashamed, embarrassed, humiliated. I think the shame and fear was the strongest emotions that I had. And when I had my accident, this was not where I live now. This is where I had
Mm.
grown up in another state. When I had my accident, it was a very, very high profile case. It was
Wow.
all over the news. I still think to this day it was the third biggest accident in the history of the state.
Oh, wow.
Um, and there was a lot involved with the news, with attorneys, with police, first responders. Like it just went on for years. So when the assault happened, I was like, I don't want any more police involvement. I knew the news would have been contacted. I don't want any more news involved in my life. If I tell my parents, they're going to pull me out of high school. Where am I going to go to school?
Yeah.
These are things you worry about when you're 16, when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I won't see any of my friends. So I never told anybody. I
Wow.
never told a soul. And when I went through my MDMA is when it all came to the forefront. And I was
Mm.
like, you know what? I need to tell my family. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, I was starting the podcast. So and I'm very transparent. I'm a very
Uh-huh.
transparent person, so I was starting the podcast, so I knew I had to tell my family just because of that, because the world was gonna know, but I knew going through I could have never talked about it again and not even
Yeah.
had this be part of my story, but it's important because,
Mm.
the MDMA made me realize that I need to tell my parents and my brother about what happened. So I literally just told them a year ago.
Wow. So
I know.
how did they sit with that information? Because and the reason I ask, it's not that I find it fascinating, but I do find it like, I'm curious about it because for me, my coming out was, about this situation that happened to me. I was, with a ex-Marine. We was going and ministering to different people, right? And
Mhm,
he had like an associate pastor, and
mhm.
I was there just with them. And so we was talking to this person who was going through, and he was expressing the trauma that he went through as a child. And so when we was coming back, he was like, "Is everything all right, Mike?" And I was like, and I was like, I've experienced something like that. And then we went and had a good conversation about it, and then that was me telling another human being what
Yeah.
happened about it that I suppressed for over 20 years.
Yeah.
So,
Scary.
yeah, so it's interesting, but I was with someone who I guess I wouldn't say he was licensed, but as a minister,
Mhm.
he talked with various people in various degrees about that, and I was one and how he took it and expressed it and, digested it and then offered advice and, comfort and care,
Mhm.
because he's somewhat of a professional, right?
Right.
And I'm wondering, how did your family digest that information?
Yeah. It's so hard. It's
Yeah.
so hard. I think my brother, for instance, I took him aside and I told him alone.
Mhm.
Um, he and I are very, very close, and I told him alone, and his first reaction was, "Okay, we'll talk about this, but I've got to tell you, I'm a bit relieved because I thought you were going to tell me you were sick with cancer or something." And he goes, "So I just
Mhm.
want to say I'm a little bit relieved that that
Yeah.
wasn't, what you told me. However, we need to talk about this." And then my parents were kind of like anything. It was like shell shock. And
Mm,
they really, because they were like, "When did this happen?" And I told them exactly when it happened. My mom was actually out of town with my brother. He had a competition. He was in swimming. He had a swim meet out of town, and she was out of town. So I told him exactly when it happened, and they were in shock, but of course they support me. They
yeah,
know that this is a big part of my life now, and I talk about this all the time on the show. And it was hard telling them, but to be honest with you, I don't think I was even going to tell them until I went
mm,
through the MDMA, and I was like, "No, they need to know. I need to tell them." And the MDMA, like, kinda gave me the courage to be able to come out and tell them about what
yeah,
happened, because I don't think if I hadn't have gone through that, I don't think I would've. I still, to this day, don't think I would've told them about it. So the MDMA gave me the clarity I needed,
mm.
that I needed to let them know.
So you said it gave you the clarity, but I'll ask, like, what made you, like, say, "You know what? I mean, I understand the transparency, like, but I guess the question I'm trying to formulate is, like, what gave you the strength to say, 'Man, Imma tell them,' and to make it a part of your show and talk about?"
You know what it was? It was the fact that I felt so, when you suppress trauma and you suppress all kinds of these emotions and you're not in touch with them, you feel like you're carrying 500 pounds around with you all the time.
Mm,
Like, it's a constant, like, you just feel weighted down. You don't even really necessarily feel healthy. And so after I went through the MDMA, like I said, it gave me so much clarity. I came out, I felt like I was floating on a cloud. The
yeah,
weight was lifted. The tension and the trauma I had been carrying for decades got released from my body, and
yeah,
I just felt so, like, light and airy
yeah,
and really in touch with everything, and it gave me the courage to be able to talk about it and not be without being ashamed.
yeah. Mm,
And because
that's
it's
huge.
not, yeah, it's not like, well, you go through and people are like, "Well, why me?" Well, why not me? I wouldn't
Yeah,
want this to happen to somebody else.
right,
So why
right,
not me? So now what can I do and take this and make this into a positive?
mhm,
And coming out of my MDMA session, I just had that. It was literally just clear. It was like an aha moment. And was it hard to tell them? Yes. It's never an easy conversation to have. Um, but now I'm at the point I can talk about it. I don't get triggered.
yeah,
I don't get I don't get, like, knots in my stomach anymore or tension. Because I'm like, "You know what? I'm taking this and turning it into a positive, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. I did nothing wrong." I was just a human being that couple terrible things happened to,
yeah.
and, And I'm not going to let that define who I am.
You're totally right, and especially, with situations like that, man, it takes a lot of strength, so I wanna, just tell you right now, you are a rock star because it takes a lot of strength to go through a journey like that, right? And be like, you know what? I don't want that to happen to somebody else. If my story can be a relief valve for someone else to, one, go to a party, pay attention, or or don't want to do this or that and the third, right? And keep themselves from harm's way. Or, hey, if you went through this trouble, here's how I went through my journey to get through it. Like you said, peace mark,
Yeah.
because there's so many people that have been through, what we've been through, and so you can customize your journey, moving forward. And
And
one thing I would oh, so
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say is, like, I love about, what you're doing with your podcast. I think you have what, you call your life audit, and you
Yep.
ask people to figure out,
Yep.
where they exactly are.
Hmm.
Um, why is, honesty about location so important before somebody starts to try to heal for you?
You can't heal unless you have the knowledge, right? You have to have the tools and the knowledge to understand what's going on physically with
Mhm,
yourself. And so when I created the life audit, because I literally, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was, I think, February,
mhm,
and we're getting ready, tax season. And I'm like, okay, so tax season sucks. Everybody hates it. And, but, we also need to do an audit on our lives.
yeah,
And we need to do an audit on, because one thing about, a healing journey is, you don't just have to become in touch with your body. And what I was trying to tell you, you have to be super, super in tune to
mhm,
where you're giving your energy to, where
yeah,
your energy is going, like what energy deposits, where they're landing. So you have to understand that to even before you can even start.
mhm, yeah,
So
you're right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to do a life audit. So I put this out like in February, probably woke up at 2 in the morning thinking about this. And I was like, I need to do this. So I'm like, we need to do a life audit. So I put these questions together. It literally takes a couple minutes. It's super fast, but hundreds of people have taken it and it's been eye-opening. And people are like, oh my gosh, like, and there's four different categories you can land.
Mhm,
And there's no wrong answer. It
mhm,
just kind of gives you a starting point, and it gives you a nice description of where you're at. And what I did is to piggyback off of the life audit, if people are ready to dig deeper, I
mhm,
created the Rockstar 30 program. So it's
mm,
a 30-day guided journey that I am there holding your hand through.
mhm.
I say I'm your tour guide, your tour manager. Um, because everything's music related. But I guide you through this 30-day journey, and depending on where it's customized, depending on
Mhm,
where you land with your audit. And what it does is it gives you an opportunity to just reflect each day. And it literally, the workbook itself, it literally takes you maybe 10 minutes a day at the most. I give you prompt questions that you can write down, and just gives you something to think about. And then you can just move on to the next day to the next one. And by the beginning and then the end of the 30 days, you can
mhm,
reflect back to see how you felt when you first started versus how you felt when you finished the 30-day program. And it's really nice because it's hard to it's designed for busy people. It's
yeah,
designed for high achievers, people that are really busy, that don't want any bullshit. They just want to
yes,
get going and get it
yep,
done, so, and it's supposed to be fast. Like I said, if you can't find 5 or 10 minutes a day for yourself, that's another conversation we need to have.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
100%.
And so that's what that's designed for. But it gives you so much information. It puts you in tune with your nervous system, who you're giving your energy to, kind of energy you're receiving back from people. It just gives you those cues. It just gives you to start thinking. It's supposed to be very light, not heavy.
Mhm,
And it's just supposed to get you to start thinking about things. And I've had people tell me, I never thought of things like this before. I never
yeah,
even would have thought to ask myself that question, and it's all guided. The whole thing's guided, so it's really effortless.
Mm. You know, with your life audit and also in your podcast, you talk about a lot, that I've seen about boundaries, and you
Yes.
say kind
Oh,
of and you talk about boundaries are not like, a punishment, they
yes.
protect your peace.
Yes.
What made you understand the difference, of that in your own life?
You cannot heal without setting boundaries. Like if you're well, you in life in general, we should
Mhm.
just have boundaries. But as you get to know yourself and understand yourself, you need to allow that time for you to heal. And some of that might be setting boundaries. I did a whole episode on this. And it doesn't mean that you have to cut people out of your life. That's not what it means. You can very kindly just say, I've got some things I'm working on. If I don't reach out, don't take it personally. I've just got stuff. Or you could say it's nobody's business and you don't have to tell
Yeah.
anybody anything. Again, this is your journey, but you have to set boundaries because people that are sucking the life out of you
Oh,
or sucking the energy out of you is just going to make you take longer.
yeah.
So, and it becomes once you set the you almost need to really take some time because once you start setting those boundaries, a lot of people just kind of fall off naturally. Like you
Mm,
don't even have to do anything. It just kind
yeah,
of happens. But what it does, Michael, is it
yeah,
opens up the universe for a whole new set of people to come into your life that are like ready to help you and support you and it just opens up so many doors and then there's people that will pop back in when you're ready. It's up to you. It's
yeah,
you're you know you can't when you're you have to put yourself first.
yeah.
And when you're going through something like this, you cannot worry about other people's feelings. Their feelings aren't your problem, you
Uh,
know? And
it
now, understand this. It's easier said
yeah,
than done. You have families, people have, partners and children. I get all that. But that's
yeah.
where I'm saying just give yourself 10 minutes a day.
No, oh my goodness, 'cause I was having a conversation, over here, I'm in Korea, so, you get close to people, more like, I guess, a makeshift family in a way, right? So, we was having a discussion, I was having it with my subordinates, and I was just letting them know, like, "Hey, you cannot tailor everything to everybody's emotions," and I was using, like, for you're a keynote speaker, and a speaker doesn't go in a room full of 40 to 50 people. I mean, you know your audience, but you don't go and try to tailor your message to the person to the left, to the person to the right, to the person to the, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way because we're multifaceted human beings and, we're all at different levels at different times. There's no way I can cater to your feelings, to your feelings, to your feelings. I have to do what's right and speak it or say it or whatever. And they was like, "Well, sir, that's kind of wrong." And they're young, so different generation, different mindset. And
Of
I said, "Well,"
course.
and I was like, "How do you talk to your friends?" Like they like, "Well, I try to talk to each and every." I said, isn't that exhausting?" And they like,
Hmm.
"Yeah." And I'm like, "Do you have a lot of friends?" They like, "No, most of them." I was like, "You're proving my point, dude." Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like I'm like, you cannot cater to everyone's emotions, and just hearing you say it it's
Hmm.
like, wow, so refreshing, like,
Have you
and it's
heard have you heard the saying, and if you haven't, I'll tell you who said it, but have you heard the saying that your energy is like currency and not everybody can afford it?
oh, yes, I have.
You
Yes,
know
I
who
have.
said that?
No, I do not.
Taylor Swift. So I'm like, but it's so true. Like
Yeah.
your energy is like a super expensive commodity, It's like an
Mhm.
investment and not
Yeah.
everybody can afford it and not everybody deserves to get it. You have to be like, I'm very particular. Like my
Right.
circle, since I've gone through this, my circles has become very small, which is
Mm.
amazing because I've
Yeah.
got these incredible people that are like, they're just unbelievable. But it's kind of like, not that there's anything wrong with Mazdas, but I talk about this in my keynote. Do you want to be a Mazda or Mercedes? Take your pick because
Yeah.
a Mazda is wonderful. They're great cars, are reliable. They'll get you from point A to point B, but God damn it, I'm a Mercedes. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, so
No, I
you
got
really
you.
need to think of it like that. Like it's about healing and knowing your worth and
Yeah.
knowing, what type of people deserve to have you in their life.
No, and that is so true. Man, I love it. I love it. You talk about the music industry and you use it like, in your healing language, through your stages and stuff.
Mhm.
I guess what you was talking about. What did the music industry teach you about performance, pain, and identity that kind of translated into what you're doing now in your podcast?
It's a great question. Well, one thing about trauma survivors that
Mhm,
I've learned, and I'm not a professional, so this is just my own research, but it's what really resonated with me is that trauma survivors a lot of times, more so than not, have super busy lives. They're
mm,
very busy. They have loud lives. A lot of trauma survivors move a lot or they live in very loud, busy cities. I couldn't have picked the more perfect profession to suppress my trauma. Like,
mhm,
it was a crazy, wild ride in that business, and I was working, 12, 18-hour days, so I didn't really have time to think about anything. It was great. And I lived in Vegas, I lived in LA, I lived in, the tours, and I lived in these big, big, busy I had this big, busy life. So it was awesome, but, it taught me, like, going through working in that, you know, it wasn't necessarily healthy. I was really good at what I did. Everybody thought I had my shit together. I was very, very on top of it. I was very organized. Like when a show came in, it was on schedule. Like if your sound check is scheduled for 4 o'clock, your ass better be on that stage at 3:39 else or 3:59, else you're gonna be hearing from me. And
mhm,
so, everybody's like, "Oh, you've got your everything together, this and that." But I was so good at being fine. And
mm,
and I hate, hate, hate the saying fake it till you make it because that's what I did. I was the textbook of fake it till you make it for decades. And
mm.
and you can't fake it. You can't
Yeah,
fake your way through healing, you
mm,
know? And so, but working in that industry, it's given me I some amazing, wonderful friends that and stuff, but it's given me some amazing material that I've been able to use with the show and with the programs I'm doing, and I'm doing weekly episodes now, and they're all based around healing, and, like, I just did
mm,
the sound check, and then the set list was last week, and I think I've got load in, load out coming up about the energy. We load in and we don't load out the negative
mhm.
energy. And I've got the whole year. I've got the groupie. The groupie's going to be a juicy one.
Yeah,
But it's given me so much like material to use these metaphors for because who doesn't love music?
yeah,
I mean, who doesn't love music? So it's giving me all this metaphors to use so people can like, oh, I didn't think of it like that.
mm,
Like the venue is my body. Yeah, the venue is your body. That's what the
mm,
venue is. So that's coming out next week, the venue. Um, but, so it puts a little twist on it so it's not
mm.
so clinical
Yeah,
and, textbook
yeah.
where people I think can relate to it and it'll resonate.
And see, I love that how you're using basically the music to translate with the trauma. Wow. And then I'm not sure if the listeners, if you guys was listening, where it said, oh, she was talking about I'm fine. That phase where saying through trauma, going through the situation that I was good at being fine.
Yeah.
For people listening who is still in that I'm fine phase,
Mhm.
still functioning, still being busy, still carrying the load and everything, what is the smallest honest step you will ask them to take today to make a change in their life?
Well, you're not fine.
Mm,
And that's one thing, like with me, like I don't sugarcoat anything because I'm not doing anybody any favors lying to anyone, right? So I just want you to know you're not fine, but that not fine is also your gift. That is where you're gonna pull these amazing tools and information out of yourself, and it's gonna take catapult you to, like, the life you want. Like, nobody that's one thing, like, in my keynote, I say, "You have to be your own hero. Nobody is coming to save you. No one. You have to be your own hero." So, be that, and picture the life you want, and say no to everything else that doesn't guide you to that life. And
Mhm.
but it starts within, and we have to take a lot of really deep thoughts into ourself. Like through meditation, I do a lot of shadow work, and shadow work is really looking at kind of the ugly versions of ourselves that people don't want to face, but you have to do that because that's how you learn and grow. You have to look at that, and the scary things is where the lesson is. That's where the lesson lays, and there's been times, like, through my journey the past 6 years, that I would feel like I took a step forward, and then I would take 10 steps backwards, and it would be super frustrating, but guess why that happened? Because I still wasn't getting the lesson.
Yeah.
I still wasn't fully understanding the lesson in that. So that 10 steps backwards, once I realized the lesson and I fully got it, because you can't lie to
Mhm.
your subconscious.
Yeah.
So you can't fake it, like, "Oh, I get it, okay." No. The
Yeah.
universe knows, right?
Yeah.
So you have to, but once you get it, then you catapult back to where you were. So
Mhm.
now I kinda welcome the setbacks a little bit
Yeah.
because it's a learning tool for me. Yeah. And that's where I'm saying, if you switch your thought process on it and don't make it seem so big and overwhelming, it can actually be a really, like, incredible journey.
So with this last question, I want to ask, uh, you know, uh, after this question, I want to give the floor over to you. What did I not ask that I should have asked, or what do you wish more people understood about you and the work you're doing?
I don't have all the answers,
Oh,
nobody does. Nobody has all the answers. All
mhm,
I can do is I'm just here, like I said, I'm your tour manager. I'm your tour guide through this journey. I'm here if you need me to hold your hand through it. I can give you the tools. You can do it on your own. There is no right or wrong way to heal. There's
yeah,
no just because I went through, like, somebody might be listening and be like, well, she went through this horrific accident. She was assaulted. I just got COVID. Somebody might be saying something like that. And I'm like, there's no measuring tool for trauma. Trauma is
oh,
trauma. It does not matter. So don't lessen how you're feeling because you're comparing it to somebody else's journey. Because all our journeys are the same. But I want people to know too, this is the one part you hold the cards.
yeah.
You control what is going to work for you and what's not. You control the journey you're on, you know? So look at it that it's just going to make you the best version you can be, and it's just going to benefit everybody that in your life that you love, that, is a part of your life. It's just going to being the best version of yourself is just going to trickle down to them. And there's so much that I've learned about generational trauma that's passed down to us
Um,
through our ancestors, our grandparents, even our parents, not unintentional, but
yeah.
there's a lot of generational trauma that gets passed down. And that's why a lot of us don't have the tools that we need to make sense of all of this. So, to have like a little, little kick in the butt and a little guide might be all people need. Just just to start. And I want people to realize it's so true. Like, you've already been
Mhm,
through the worst of it. You can handle what's coming. You can handle it. And you're worth it. Like, you can't afford not to do it because
mhm,
people get physically sick because of this. Like, I don't know
um,
how I didn't develop an autoimmune disease or worse because of just holding all that in.
yeah.
Um, but you can't afford not to do it. You owe it to yourself and you're worth it. And the time to start is now.
You're right, and you need to start
Yeah.
now. So, Tracy, how can we get a hold of you, to see what you're doing, what you got going on? Please. Uh,
Super simple. Everything's
okay,
Trauma Rockstars. So
okay,
All socials. The podcast is on all platforms. So just look up
Perfect.
Trauma Rockstars socials. I mean, even on LinkedIn, my website. And if you want to reach out to me, you can email me at podcast@traumarockstars.com and I will, or message me on social. So many people message me on socials and I respond. It's not AI, it's not someone else, it's me. And I love to hear from people. And how their journeys are going and the positives and the negatives. And if and if you think if what I'm saying isn't resonating with you, that's okay. Find something else that does, because
Mm.
there's tools out there that will help you. You just need to find them. And I'm also writing a book that is going to be out the end of this year about my journey, and I talk about
Yes.
everything that I went through, my life in the music industry. There's a lot of juicy chapters in there
Ooh.
about stuff that I could write a whole book just on that, honestly. And then my whole healing journey is chapters. So that book should be out the end of the year.
Okay. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for bringing the honesty, your courage, your real survival wisdom to this conversation. Your work honestly gives people and myself, just researching you and going through the questions, permission to stop carrying everything and be grateful for the time we have and share it with others. So,
Hmm.
thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
From these guys.